I'm now opening the ABF meeting for August 2026 at 6:38, and I'll just get the Head of Governance, Ms. Newman, to explain what's happening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, we are experiencing some issues with our live stream at the moment. We will record the meeting through Teams and it will be available on the website. We will endeavour to get the live stream back up and running while the meeting progresses. Thank you.
All right, so let's continue. Welcome to all those in attendance, and I now invite Councillor McGoldrick to read the acknowledgement to country. Thank you.
The City of Melville acknowledges the Bilberman people as the traditional owners, custodians of the land on which the city stands today, and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders past, present and future.
Thank you, Councillor McGoldrick. I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. The purpose of the agenda briefing forum on the screen. Privacy and responsible information sharing collection notice on the screen. Okay, item 2, attendance and apologies. We have no apologies from councillors attending tonight. We do have Director Pickering online. So before we commence with the business of the meeting, I would like to ask elected members, staff and members of the community presenting to who are going to be presenting tonight, if you're using the microphone during the meeting, be mindful that they are wireless so you can move them, but please make sure that you speak clearly into your microphone, because sometimes elected members, officers and perhaps even the gallery have difficulty hearing some speakers, so make sure you speak clearly into the microphone. So item 3, declaration by members. We now move to declarations by members. Are there any declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting? Nil. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin? Nil. Announcements by the presiding member. There are approved deputations this evening. 2 deputations have been approved for tonight's meeting from Mr. D. Ewart of Cardinia and Miss Maggie of Burswood, both of which are in relation to item CD 2673, Morris Buzzacott Reserve Tennis Infrastructure Renewal Project. I will call you forward prior to discussion of the item to make your deputation to council. Approved written submissions. There are no written submissions that have been approved ahead of tonight's meeting. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening? Ms. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no disclosures of interest have been received for tonight's meeting.
Are there any further disclosures from elected members? Nil. Moving on to public question time. I now declare public question time open at 6:42. There have been no questions received ahead of tonight's meeting. Are there any questions from the gallery? If there are no questions from the gallery, I now declare the public question time closed at 6:42 p.m. Moving on to item 7, awards and presentations. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 8, applications for new leave of absence. The item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Number 9, confirmation of minutes. The item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Item 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. The following items have been identified as containing confidential attachments. That's C26406 RFT 252636, construction of Canning Bridge Town Centre, Morra Mews, Applecross. Item C26407 RFT 252644, supply of Canning Bridge Play Space, Morra Mews, Applecross. And C26411 RFQ 252661, supply of security infrastructure and maintenance. Should elected members wish to discuss the confidential attachments, the items will be held to the end of the meeting, and I'll call for a motion to go behind closed doors. Item 12, petitions. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. So now we're moving on to reports. And for the convenience of those making a deputation, I will start by bringing forward item CD 2673, Morris Buzzacott Reserve Tennis Infrastructure Renewal Project. Okay, so Mr. D. Earwood, will you please make your way to the microphone to give your deputation? You'll have 10 minutes to speak, with another further 5 minutes for elected members to ask you questions. Thank you.
Okay, could we have the slides up, please, for the presentation?
Can you
Thank you.
please move your microphone to where you're speaking? Thank you, that's better.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening to provide our deputation relating to the Cardinia Tennis Club redevelopment. My name is Dale Hewitt and I've been president at Cardinia Tennis Club since 2020. Tonight I'm supported in the back row by Jeff Thomas, club vice president, Rowan Swan, social captain, Mike Gill, club coach, as well as Michelle Magdy and Charlotte King on my right from Tennis West, who will provide a separate deputation. Tonight we're here to support the proposition to approve the redevelopment works to proceed in the current financial year. Our facilities are at end of life, falling apart and will not sustain further usage much longer. We've been on a long planning journey for the last 6 to 7 years, with many challenges, and have been subject to changes in direction along the way. The last 2 years, subsequent to the city's endorsement of its tennis strategy, the club and city have worked together, resulting in positive direction in infrastructure development, governance alignment and financial modelling to affirm viability of the club and facilities into the next 20 years. This has culminated with the completion of detailed design, project costing, updated management licence and financial model to allow the city and club to regularly review progress against planned growth and profitability, as well as finalisation of the club's 2026 to 2030 strategic plan to underpin the necessary governance, monitoring and growth to ensure viability into the future. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Thank you. Cardinia Tennis Club has a long history of providing tennis to the southwestern suburbs of the Melville LGA since its beginnings in the 1980s. We have traditionally had a strong family and junior membership base, providing family-oriented social groups and competitions, club championships, pennants, or in other words, inter-club competitions, junior and adult development and cardio tennis through our coaching programs, which is open to all members of the community, not just club members. Our community is not just defined by our club membership. We provide the following to all members of our community. Coaching, as mentioned, social tennis 2 to 3 days a week. We have regularly peaked at more players than we have courts available for our social players. Public court hire, with all courts often fully booked out in afternoons, evenings during the spring, summer and autumn seasons. We have over 2,000 court hire bookings annually. School bookings, we have provided courts to 2 local high schools since before my time at the club. Despite conditions of the current conditions of the courts, we have now added a 3rd local school as of this term. Schools typically book up to 4 sessions a week with up to 50 participants per session and often taking out additional bookings to their regular bookings. We also have an annual inter-school competition, a 2-day competition for primary schools run by Tennis West with our head coach. Our growth has traditionally come through members of the public wanting to progress from general court hire to social tennis and coaching to playing pennants for the club. Our facilities are now at end of life. Of our 9 courts, 2 have been permanently closed and 5 are seriously degraded, with surfaces stripped back to foundations. Lighting infrastructure has failed numerous times, requiring expensive repairs. Fencing is falling down due to corrosion, and drainage is not fit for purpose, with only 1 drainage point contributing to degradation of the infrastructure. Next slide, please. So, timeline and history. Cardinia Tennis Club has been proactively planning redevelopment work and engagement with the city since around 2019. Our focus has been on club growth as well as redevelopment to counter deterioration of the facilities. Over the past 7 years, we have seen court surface degradation on courts 1 to 5. Pennants and social cannot be played on a number of courts due to their deterioration. Courts 8 and 9 were permanently closed in 2023. Major lighting failures, as mentioned, have occurred, not just globe replacement. Currently, 5 of our courts are closed at night due to lighting failures and court conditions. Strategic plans. The 2017 to 2019 strategic plan focused on governance, member growth, coaching, junior tennis and pennants. Growth resulting from this plan continued into 2020. Our 2021 to 2023 strategic plan further focused on growth, which, as you can see from the graph, has our membership growth was realised through 2023. It also identified the need to plan for facility upgrade as opposed to just court resurfacing. Through this period, we commenced engagement with the city with Tennis West support to highlight the need for support of development of a large project. During this time in 22 and 23, we prepared applications for the city to submit to CSRFF grants. Of these, only the first grant was successful. This was for the Court Night Lights program for about $58,000 contribution to a $180,000 LED lighting project. The remaining 3 applications were unsuccessful and they related to the potential upgrade of the facility, not just the lights. At this time, we also submitted separate grant applications in 22 and 23 directed to Tennis Australia for the National Court rebate grants, both of which were successful to a value of $46,000 to integrate the proposed LED project with the court booking system. It is important to note that we could not proceed with these 3 grants at the time, as the club was responsible for the majority of the shortfall in budget, which would have impacted our finances and ability to apply for future grants. In 22 and 23, in parallel with grant applications, the City of Melville conducted its inaugural tennis strategy, which was endorsed in mid-23. The findings of the strategy for our club were that we had a strong community support and immediate upgrade was required. In late 24, the city's officers began planning the redevelopment project, with engagement commencing with the club in early 25 to identify terms of reference for the design. This process is now culminating with the August ordinary meeting for elected officials to vote on the proposition to amend budget for the works to proceed this year. Next slide, please. So design and development, as I mentioned, this commenced in 2025 with consultation between the city and the club to address known issues, club requirements, Tennis Australia standards, and to align with the city's plans for the reserve. Detailed design is now complete. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, a management model and financial model have been developed in consultation between the city and the club. The financial model forecasts future income and expenses over a 20-year period, including growth in participants and fees over the coming years. Expenses include forecast of monies to be set aside for future upgrade, maintenance and repairs. Fees have been benchmarked against similar clubs in the LGA and adjacent LGAs to ensure the fees and income is sustainable and realistic for our club. The financial model also considers our current bank balance and allows for an initial sinking fund of $40,000 to be topped up annually, club contribution of a further $45,000 to the redevelopment cost, with the remainder of our balance being incorporated into the financial model. The revised management model establishes the governance from regular reporting and meetings between City and Club to ensure we are on plan with income, expenses, growth and booking targets, as well as red flags are identified early for action. Our strategic plan sets our direction for 26 to 2030 and is aligned with the pillars of the management and financial models. We are setting ourselves up for success and ensuring the long-term viability of the club. Next slide, please. Our commitment to the redevelopment and future of the club include alignment with the city with the design, alignment with the city on the management and financial model, development of a sinking fund with regular contributions, contribution of $45,000 to the redevelopment cost, process to monitor growth, income, expenses and future costs against the plan. Next slide, please. So, final thoughts. Our club has a strong connection with the local community, providing tennis participation opportunities to players of all ages and capabilities. We provide social competition, coaching, general bookings and school bookings. We have a proven track record of growing participation and memberships as evidenced by previous strategic plans and their outcomes. We've had a strong growth in the past, even despite challenges of ageing infrastructure. Rebuilding participation is not something new to us, and we are confident that we can achieve this. The city's tennis strategy of 2023 clearly articulated Morris Buzzacott Reserve is a strategically based catchment in the southwestern suburbs of Melville. Tennis is an in-demand sport across the LGA and aligns with the city's mission. Our infrastructure is an urgent and immediate need of upgrade, and there is overwhelming community response and support to the tennis strategy and its findings. In summary, Cardinia Tennis Club agrees with the findings of the tennis strategy of 2023. This process, supported by the city and club engagement, development of facility designs and implementation of new management and financial models, is implementing the findings of the tennis strategy, which we support. Our facility is at end of life. Should the redevelopment not proceed in the coming year, the club and facilities are unlikely to survive. Next slide, please. So I'll just finish up with a couple of images. This is the condition of our court as of the last weekend. You can see the playing surface has completely deteriorated on 5 courts down to the pavement. Next slide. Final slide. Courts 7 and 8 on the left, which were decommissioned in 2023. And on the right, you can see the fences falling down due to corrosion of the posts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ewart. Now we have time, 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions. Are there any questions from elected members? Yes, Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So my first question would be, in your view, is there a clear correlation between the deterioration of the courts and the lowering of the membership?
I believe there is some correlation. There's also natural attrition, I guess, of people leaving, moving on, children ageing out and moving on. But when you do have a look at the graph I put up, from 2023 onwards, and you look at the events of lighting and court degradation, I believe there is an element of people leaving because of that. But I'd also point out that, as I said, we've got an additional school that's joined us. We still have strong court hire. Membership is really important, but I believe we can regrow membership, but we still have a good baseline of people using our facilities.
Councillor York, you have a second question?
Yeah, just a question around the lighting. I can't see anywhere in the information we've been given, like the lux level. Do you have a ideal lux level that you're aiming for the lighting?
Mr. Ewart?
Yes, sorry, 2 parts of that response. Jeff Thomas and I, we were out there with the lux meter back in, I think, 2021 when we were starting the application for grants. and we measured all the lux levels. So we actually had that documented at that time. In terms of the second part of your question, do we document what's required? There is an Australian standard for competition level that requires 350 lux. From memory, we hardly achieve 350 lux anywhere, barely achieve 250 lux in a lot of places. So the lighting for competition tennis is really important.
Thank you. Are there any further elected members with questions? Councillor McGoldrick.
Thank you, Dale, and thanks to all your volunteers that have come here tonight. And I acknowledge all the, your volunteers in your sporting group and the great work that you do. I was just going to talk generally about your relationship with other tennis clubs locally in the city of Melville, and also the club's relationship with the 10 other groups at the Murris Buzzcott Reserve, and generally to see how you all get along. Thank you.
Mr. Ewart.
Thank you. We don't have an ongoing active relationship with other clubs. That process was envisaged as part of the tennis strategy, but it hasn't really moved forward. I do have a personal relationship with some clubs just through my son's tennis, but we don't have an ongoing current relationship committee to committee with other clubs. In terms of within the reserve, we do have a good relationship with a number of clubs. I believe we've got a good relationship with hockey and with the football club mainly. Other clubs such as lawn bowls and others are probably and netball are too far removed from us to have much interaction. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thanks very much, Dale, for your presentation. You spoke briefly at the end about how you think that the club is unlikely to survive without this investment in the infrastructure. What do you think will be the impact on the broader community, perhaps just social players, the general neighbourhood in that Cardinia area if this doesn't proceed?
Mr. Ewart.
I believe it will be a mix of people who will just leave tennis for good and others that will move elsewhere. I believe we're in a situation now, if we do go ahead with the redevelopment now, people can see the end is in sight and new facilities coming, people will stay and we can regrow. I think if this, development pushes out beyond a year, I think people will probably look elsewhere or just stop playing tennis. That's my honest feeling.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Dale, for coming, and for everybody else from the club who supported you. That's great. 51 members isn't many, but you've explained why, and you explained how you still do a great service to the community. But of the 51 members, how many are juniors? You've got the club coach here. I just wondered how many juniors you've got. Mr. Ewart.
Thank you. I don't have that number at hand, but it is a small number, and part of our rebuilding process is to get the families back, get the children back. We don't have the numbers that we used to have. From memory, the juniors are probably in the order of 5 to 10. I couldn't give you exact numbers, but it's in that order. And certainly part of our rebuilding is to rebuild the coaching programs, rebuild the cardio tennis, rebuild the families, in a couple of years' time have children playing pennants again. As I said, our club is really committed to a family environment, and that's what we need to rebuild.
And just to follow up, if I may, Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
and you segued nicely to my next question, have you got currently any pennant teams playing?
We currently have one. Before this season, probably refer to Jeff, we probably had about three before this season. Winter teams do fall off in winter, but we've only got one team this season.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thanks very much, Dale. I appreciate the presentation. Following a conversation I did have with you, and you are aware of how that we did actually approve the budget in June, and this is an unbudgeted item. However, I think it would be really helpful if you just to, give more information to the elected members that, where you had come from and to where you are now, with the, because I was involved with the tennis strategy, and I do know that back then, Cardinia Tennis Club, it wasn't supported the way it should have been, for a number of reasons. So I think if you can just explain that, and then that'll give us, quite a good understanding of where we are now. Do you understand what I'm saying about the the lack of support with regard to, the administration back then. Things have changed, and so now that the officers, now we're moving forward on this. Thanks.
Mr. Ewart.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Probably coming back to my graph, I did try to explain that, but would have needed a lot more time to explain the last 7 years of history. But yes, when I became president, it was actually before I became president, we identified that there was some degradation on one of the courts. As part of our 21 to 23 strategy, we identified that there was more failing infrastructure. So we engage with council, with members who are not elected officials, but members of council who are no longer in council, to seek their support on how to move forward, even to the point where we took upon ourselves to prepare the grant applications for council to submit. My understanding was that state government provides a third, club provides a third, council provides a third. We were only offered $10,000 for a $200,000, $180,000 project. So we weren't afforded the, I guess, the financial opportunities that should have come with a project. We've also had one grant application we were prepared, and then we were told it wasn't submitted because this council member had a plan to integrate a hockey court with the tennis courts, which we opposed, and we were told that we would have to accept that to move forward. And then when we did submit that final grant application in 23 that was rejected, that was council submitting a combined tennis hockey opportunity. And when I spoke to council for the reasons of rejection, they said the submission was quite poor and they don't support combined tennis and hockey, which we didn't support, but we were told that's the only way support would go forward. So that culminated in 23, roughly around the same time that the tennis strategy was finalised. And the tennis strategy then documented the community support and levels of support for the facility, and a recommendation that urgent action is required. Since then, as I said, late 2024, council began discussions with officers to develop the program of works, and we were then involved to make sure it's clear what the issues were with drainage and the infrastructure, to make sure that the problems that we were facing were captured in the design.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for your presentation. I understand that the club at the moment is in a difficult situation with lower membership numbers and not able to significantly contribute to the court resurfacing. I guess if the courts are resurfaced and you're able to regrow the membership and put on more pennant teams and so on, would there be a commitment from the club to sort of, I guess, put money aside and to budget towards, the future renewal or resurfacing that will occur at some point on the horizon?
Mr. Ewart.
Yes, absolutely, and apologies if I didn't have the time to explain that. The financial model I was talking about, which with Jeff Edwards and his team, we've been through that. It's not a 20-year lease, it's a 20-year model to say what our finances look like year on year. It shows our initial sinking fund, the fact that we'll contribute to it annually to grow that. We've factored into that 20-year plan the future resurfacing, maintenance on fencing, maintenance on lights. And as a club, we've had input into that to make sure that we're happy with the membership fees, which need to increase, to make sure they're realistic for the type of club we have. So yes, we have planned for all of that in consultation with the council planning team.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. It's great to see you back here at council and this item coming up. I'm just trying to remember what you said in your presentation. Apologies. You said that you've got a new school. You've got new schools coming on board. How many schools do you have, and how do you go about getting them to come and play on the courts or to participate?
David.
Thank you. Yes, we've got three high schools. As I said, two of them have been playing at our club since before I joined the club. and they just keep coming back. These are not schools like Applecross that have tennis programs. These are schools that have a PE subject where they bring their kids along for for a PE activity. We did get a call from somebody, another school, to join us, and that's come out of the blue. As part of our 26 to 2030 strategy, we're looking at bringing another 2 schools. We've already brought on 1 more. We had the opportunity also that we're right on the doorsteps of a primary school. We need to have further discussions with them, as well as there are several more high schools in the area identified for us to contact. So I'm confident we can get at least another one, if not more. But as with anything, whether it's growing membership, growing school participation, when you've got infrastructure like we have, we're grateful for those who keep coming back and who are still joining or hiring courts. But it's a very hard sell to knock on somebody's door and say, come and let us invoice you to use our facilities. So a lot of that discussion is being held off until after an upgrade, because I think that's the right time to start knocking on doors and bringing in new organisation, new school, new members, new people.
Yes, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. And you're talking about the Cardinia Tennis Club strategy. I've just done a quick Google and it's not on your website. Can you provide that to us? Or have we already had it? Sorry.
Probably refer to Jeff. I thought it was part of the report documents. It's been submitted, so it certainly is available. And if it can't be provided through the planning team, I can certainly provide it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from elected members? If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Mr. Ewart, for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Wheatland. All right, now we move on to Ms. Gadji. Please make your way to the microphone to make your deputation. You'll have 10 minutes to speak, with a further 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Ms. Magdi.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, councillors and officers, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of the redevelopment of Cardinia Tennis Club. I'm here on behalf of Tennis West and in support of the Cardinia Tennis Club committee and broader community who have worked alongside the city for many years to progress this project. Tonight, I ask you to consider this project not simply as a tennis facility redevelopment, but as an investment in community infrastructure that delivers directly against the city's council plan, implements the recommendations of the city's tennis strategy, and contributes to the long-term vision for Morris Buzzacott Reserve as a sustainable and vibrant community recreation centre. The agenda before council speaks to evidence-based planning, community participation, inclusivity, sustainability, and ensuring infrastructure keeps pace with community need. This project does exactly that. The City of Melville's tennis strategy identified Cardinia Tennis Club and Morris Buzzacott Reserve as strategically significant within the city's tennis network and highlighted the need for infrastructure renewal. That was in 2022-23. Now in 2026, many of those same infrastructure challenges remain. Since then, the club has navigated a lengthy and often complex redevelopment process. Through changing priorities, changing officers, and evolving expectations, the same dedicated volunteer group has remained committed to finding a solution while continuing to operate an ageing facility and serving its community. That commitment has already been demonstrated. What the club and community need now is to see years of planning, collaboration, and advocacy translated into tangible outcomes. Despite the condition of the facility, Cardinia Tennis Club continues to provide a valuable service to the community. More than 5,000 participants use the venue each year through coaching programs, social play, court hire, school activities, and club participation. 3 schools, as Dale has mentioned, continue to use the facility despite its current conditions. That ongoing utilisation is one of the strongest arguments for the redevelopment. The question is not whether the community values this facility. The community demonstrates that. The question is whether the infrastructure now reflects the level of demand. While some traditional measures such as membership and competition teams have declined over time, those trends have occurred alongside the progressive deterioration of the facility itself. Courts have been lost, surfaces have aged, fencing has deteriorated, lighting has become unreliable, and drainage issues have persisted. These challenges have impacted the overall club experience and diverted valuable volunteer time and club resources away from growth and into ongoing maintenance and temporary fixes. However, membership alone does not tell the full story. The participation data tells a far more compelling one. By 2024, the facility was already experiencing significant infrastructure decline. Yet court hire bookings increased by almost 78%, exceeding 3,500 bookings for the year and lifting Cardinia's national ranking from 77th to 57th in Australia. This is out of over 1,010 venues across the country. Within Western Australia, Cardinia ranked as the fourth highest court hire revenue. For a club operating under those conditions, that result reflects more than strong demand. It reflects a community that continued to invest in the club because it believed a better future was coming. As infrastructure continued to deteriorate and the anticipated redevelopment did not proceed, bookings began to decline. The club's national ranking fell to 71st in 2025, then to 127th in 2026, which are still significant numbers out of 1,010 venues. Whilst this decline is evident, the more important story is what came before it. Even while operating from infrastructure that had already been identified as no longer fit for purpose, Cardinia continued to attract strong participation and significant court hire activity. That is not a story of a club in decline. It is a story of a club being held back by infrastructure. From Tennis West's perspective, success is no longer defined by membership numbers. The modern tennis consumer engages through coaching, court hire, social play, school programs, emerging formats such as pickleball and paddle, and club membership. Cardinia's participation history demonstrates that the demand is already there. The challenge is not attracting people to tennis. The challenge is providing infrastructure that can keep pace with how people want to participate. This is one of the reasons Tennis West identifies Cardinia as a genuine Thrive Club. Within the Tennis West Strategic Facilities Framework, a Thrive Club is defined as a facility that combines high participation demand with strong existing capability, where investment is likely to deliver significant participation and community outcomes. Cardinia demonstrates those characteristics. It has established demand, it has a strong community connection, it has a school engagement, it has committed volunteers, it has proven governance capability, and it occupies a strategically important location servicing the southern and southeastern catchments of the city. Importantly, Cardinia is also the only tennis venue within the city of Melville that does not have supplementary school courts or publicly accessible tennis courts within a 2-kilometre catchment. For many residents, Cardinia is not one tennis option among many. It is the primary tennis destination available to them. The club is also supported by an award-winning and highly respected coaching business, Mike is here this evening, with a strong track record in junior development and inclusive participation. The coaching program has demonstrated the ability to attract and retain participants and has continued to grow participation across the venues under which it operates. Combined with strong population growth forecasts, favourable demographics and consistently high levels of interest in tennis throughout the catchment, Tennis West has every confidence that Cardinia can thrive once again with the right infrastructure in place. This redevelopment aligns with the Tennis West strategic plan, which prioritises participation growth, sustainable clubs, quality places and spaces, and ensuring more West Australians can access tennis with their local communities. This is not speculative investment. It is an investment in a location where demand, participation, coaching capability, and community support already exist. The city's tennis strategy identified Cardinia as a priority facility. The Morris Buzzacott Reserve planning process has reinforced the importance of investing in infrastructure that responds to demonstrated community need. The participation data supports renewal, the planning supports renewal, the community supports renewal through its continued use of the facility. At this point, I do not believe the question is whether Cardinia Tennis Club shall be redeveloped. Years of planning, consultation, modelling and assessment have already answered that question. The question before Council is whether the budget will be amended to allow the redevelopment to proceed now. With the continued deterioration of the courts, fencing, lighting and drainage, and the ongoing cost of temporary repairs simply to keep the facility operational, this is not a project that benefits from further delay. The community has demonstrated the demand. The committee has demonstrated the commitment. The planning has been completed. The facility now needs the investment required to secure its future. If this project proceeds, there is also an opportunity for the city and the club to work together to rebuild momentum and confidence within the community. After years of planning and uncertainty, a positive decision should be accompanied by a strong communications and engagement campaign that reconnects former members, attracts new participants, and reinforces that Cardinia Tennis Club has a bright future ahead. Councillors, on behalf of Tennis West, Cardinia Tennis Club and its volunteers, I respectfully ask Council to support the proposed budget amendment and allow this redevelopment to proceed this year. The evidence is clear that Cardinia remains a valuable and highly utilised community asset. However, it is equally clear that the condition of the facility continues to decline and the cost of waiting continues to increase. This is not a decision about whether Cardinia should be redeveloped. That case has already been made. This is a decision about whether the redevelopment proceeds now while the club still has volunteer capacity and community support to fully realise its potential. Cardinia is not a club in decline. It is a club being held back by infrastructure. The opportunity before Council is to remove that barrier and allow the club, its volunteers and its community to thrive once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Magdi. Are there any questions from elected members? Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your deputation, Michelle. Tennis West has been a key partner in developing the financial model for this renewal. From your perspective across the state, how does the inclusion of mandatory $44,000 annual sinking fund and the shift to diversified revenue like pickleball and booker court align with the financially sustainable tennis clubs you oversee in Western Australia? Thank you.
Ms Magdi.
We are encouraging all clubs to diversify their portfolio of their delivery. As mentioned numerous times throughout the presentation, we are no longer solely relying on memberships. It is expanding the portfolio of participants. A focus on participants encourages a broader community to engage with the flexibility of not having to commit whether they can afford it or not. You know, we need to cater to those needs. With regards to funding models and the supporting of clubs, not just Cardinia, but all of our clubs, we encourage them to consider the sinking fund and the contribution to a sinking fund and better governance in order to be able to continue to maintain and redevelop in the future and be more sustainable. The inclusion of alternative formats allows them to be able to provide to that sinking fund a little bit more effectively, as it's a different revenue stream catering to different markets.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Ms Magdi, for your presentation. Can you provide your notes to us, please? Because I couldn't write the stuff down quick enough.
Sure can.
Thanks.
Councillor Barber.
Yes, thanks, Michelle, for your presentation. Very interesting. So you've said that there's current demand. It's a primary destination. And I'm just asking this in your job, in your experience. The likelihood of success when a club closes down, it'll be closed for a certain period of time for the whole re-infrastructure. The likelihood of it then becoming successful again, and how long would it take? And we're only at 51 members. Is there? Yeah, I'd just like to get your perspective on that because I'm worried about how long it will take.
Ms Magdi.
I think with the fact that there's ongoing engagement and participation on the courts that you've seen in Dale's presentation, I believe there is a need, there is the necessity, and I firmly believe, which is why I included the communication strategy, the moment that ex-members, ex-participants hear that there is a good news story, they will want to get involved. I believe with a really good campaign driven by ourselves and in support of Cardinia and the council yourselves, I think we will attract numerous participants. We are diversifying the portfolio as well to include pickleball, which is most certainly taking off, and clubs would be remiss not to consider it. Will also attract a very different audience to what they've had before.
Just to follow up, because the reality is that the people who currently use the courts will go to another club, and it's just having to then entice them back. But you don't see a problem with that.
Not at all. I don't see a problem with that. I believe there will still be loyalties. There were significant loyalties during the graph that Dale showed. There were loyalties during challenging times, and I think there's a number of people that were waiting for a good news story that hasn't come yet, and they'll be excited to hear it. I have no concerns at all that people will come back, considering as well that our data is driven basically on a 10-minute drive time. I think there's a large catchment there that are in need of this facility.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. I did have a question. When you spoke about specifically the tennis coach, you spoke about juniors, but also inclusive participation, and not knowing the sport of tennis like some do. I just wonder, is it standard for every tennis club to have an inclusive pathway? Is that like for kids with a disability or people with a disability, or is that related to specialist areas like it is in football?
Ms Magdi.
With regards to inclusion, we rely on specialist coaches to be able to be confidently able to deliver programs to inclusive groups. We encourage all clubs to be inclusive and have inclusive facilities. Mike and his team specialise in a wheelchair program, and he is the only one in the state currently to do so. Two providers, and that wheelchair program, I mean, where Mike coaches, he's an award-winning coach, so his programs work. And with that inclusive nature, there is an opportunity to be a cookie cutter approach with that wheelchair program and bring it to Cardinia.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, Michelle. Just a couple of things that with regard to Tennis West support, for clubs like such as Cardinia, that would Tennis West, give them or assist them with operational guidance, and also with regard to any assistance they may require to increase, local participation. And just one more, I don't think I heard anything about Club Spark. Is Tennis West able to provide perhaps free access to that? That'll also help them along. Thank you.
Ms Magdi.
With Cardinia Tennis Club's ongoing affiliation, they will have access to Club Spark and all the benefits that come with being an affiliate of Tennis West. Included within that for all of our affiliates is the ongoing support for good governance, programming support, coaching support, marketing support that we can provide. There is an element of guiding them through this. I've been now at tennis for 7 years. This project has been discussed for 7 years, and I'm not giving up now. I will offer them support ongoing for this project.
Okay, are there any further questions from elected members? If not, thank you very much, Ms Magdi, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now, Ms Pickering, Director of Community Development, is available to take questions, but I also have Mr Burton, Manager of Healthy Melville, to assist. So, are there any questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm just curious. I remember when we passed the tennis strategy, and there was a particular noting in the tennis strategy about the Cardinia tennis courts and the immediate need for some resurfacing and some remediation works to happen straight away. And for whatever reason, that wasn't supported. I think through my mind. I don't know if it's a council decision or not, but anyway. So then I just want to know too, then if we had a tennis strategy that we've endorsed that identified immediate need for the courts to be resurfaced and repaired, et cetera, I just find it really unusual that it's not in the long-term financial plan, and also find it really unusual that we've already approved a $50,000 budget item for design. So there's a lot of things that don't line up here, and I know that's what we're going to do better moving forward. But can someone give me some answers over that, please?
I'll ask Director Tuffin to talk about the long-term financial plan, please. He's Director of Corporate Services. No, it appears to be Mr Burton, Manager Healthy Melville. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Wheatland. So, yeah, there has been ups and downs, obviously, and I haven't obviously been part of the full journey, but I am aware there was obviously changes in our approach following the tennis strategy and unsuccessful grant applications, and obviously city officers could see, as you know, where the courts had deteriorated to a fact, and the lighting in particular, that we obviously had to step in and do some further work. In late 2024, we had a budget amendment put through councillors through the financials to get that $50,000 to undertake that design work. And then at that point, what was probably been unclear is, you know, roles and responsibilities with these things, and also the fact that if the city was to invest into this infrastructure, whether financially it would work out sustainably for the club. And we've done that, obviously, financial modelling work, and also working in the background with the club around making sure, you know, governance structures are in place and management licenses were on the same page, and setting them up for success. Hence, there wasn't a specific allocation for this project. That being said, we have had allocations in the long-term financial plan for sports infrastructure renewal, like as a program. So.
Yes, actually, Director Coton, Environment and Infrastructure, can answer about the long-term financial plan, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Coton.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. The city has a range of strategies, and not everything that is on the strategy is able to be afforded and programmed in the year that's identified. But having said that, we have been doing a lot of work on refining capital planning, and this project has been identified. It's in the draft program for next financial year for 27-28. So it is staff have identified it, that would be coming to council as part of adopting the budget for 27-28. So that's the planning has been done for it, and staff are aware of it and have been working towards it.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, and thanks for your answers, Mr. Burton and Mr. Coton. I just want one more question, please. If we approved the design work in 2024, and we've heard from Mr. Burton that he's been working with the club and, you know, city staff, etc., on the way forward, why wasn't it included in last year's budget? There's a massive immediate need that was identified in the strategy for this work to be done. And this is a club that's with numbers declining. I mean, it happened at Winnicott as well. The club's decimated because of the state of the infrastructure. It can't support growth. So I just wonder how a project in such immediate need like this is overlooked.
Mr. Burton, Manager Healthy Melville.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor, for the question. It's ultimately a timing thing. So whilst we're obviously doing the design process and working through those costings, and we didn't have the information in time for the annual budget process. So and effectively that financial modelling and taking it through our executive before obviously bringing it to council's attention. So from a timing perspective, it effectively didn't line up. Because we had to be confident, one, obviously, of the design and costs, and we engaged with the club on the design in particular, but then also that sustainability element around the draft management licence and financial modelling. And that work wasn't really complete till sort of May this year. And that being said, there was obviously a few other challenges. We had some staff changeovers, which obviously put things a little bit back. And then trying to obviously work with these guys who are hardworking volunteers but have full-time jobs as well, trying to meet has also been a bit challenging at times, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I guess my question's for Manager Burton regarding the lux levels. Because I sort of think we really need a future-proof, once these lights are done, it's very unlikely they'll ever be upgraded again anytime soon. So I was just wondering, does the design include a minimum level of lux that it's trying to achieve?
Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor York, for the question. Yes, so the minimum standards within the tennis infrastructure facilities guidelines are 350 lux for club competition. So that's the standard that we'll be looking to achieve as part of this redevelopment.
Thank you. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know who would answer this, but should this budget amendment decision be successful and it'll start in 26, 27, my question is, when will construction start and how long will construction be?
Mr. Burton.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Barber for the question. So should Council approve at next week's meeting for the budget amendment? There's obviously, we need to finalise the tender documentation, even though detailed design has occurred. And given the expected cost, the actual tender needs to come to Council. So we expect that hopefully would line up between now and the end of the year with a view of starting construction in the new year. And I'd probably estimate it anywhere be like a 4 to 6 month program.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question could perhaps be directed to Manager Burton, and I'm actually raising it because I think it's important to note that there are some questions being raised that were actually addressed at the elected member engagement session we had last week. Not last week, the week before, I think it was, and it was quite a lengthy engagement session. So just wondering if perhaps Mr. Burt could actually send out the presentation to all elected members before the IMC next week, so they can actually refresh what was actually said at that meeting in the presentation. Is that possible?
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. So all of the presentations for the elected member engagement sessions are on the portal, and they're also included in the meeting invitation. So if we'll just resend the link to it to elected members. Thanks.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I probably could have asked this of the two deputies also, but I was just curious about price setting for court hire in particular, as to whether it, with the new facility, whether it'll be consistent with other clubs in Melville. And second part of that question, just in terms of monitoring the levels of court hire that we've had in the past, do you foresee any sort of impact with perhaps an increase in pricing?
Mr. Burton.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll just hand over to Mr. Edwards. He's across the financial modelling and those assumptions that Councillor Green has.
Okay, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. So the court hire fee itself was a assessment of local like clubs, and probably the best local example within our municipality is Bull Creek Tennis Club. So we sought advice from them, as well as other clubs in the sort of broader metropolitan area, which aligned to the similar model of Cardinia Tennis Club in that they're all hard courts. And that's where we started setting that price. And then we spoke with Dale and Tennis West at length about how to sort of increase that over time, so it's not one big hit and dissuades members from or public from using the courts moving forward. So we've had a gentle increase over time. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Councillor Green.
I think you pretty much answered it really, just in terms of what impact it might have to the numbers if we've got a bit of a price shock, but you've said it's gradual, so that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There has been concern that approving this project could affect other projects. Can officers confirm that proceeding with this project will not delay, cancel, otherwise impact any other project scheduled for this financial year? Thank you.
Director Coton, Environment and Infrastructure.
We will, through the Mayor, we will endeavour to give other projects that are already on tight timeframes a priority over this project. There certainly will be some staff who will be working on this project as well as other projects, but we will instruct them to prioritise the ones that are already on the program, if that pleases Council.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And look, I did miss the EMES the other week, so I apologise if I've asked questions that were addressed at that meeting. It's not like the first time that councillors have asked questions that we've been given answers to. I want to know that across the strategies that we've got, because I know in the netball plan, we have a budgeted allocation for court resurfacing. And when I was preparing a motion previously on Melville Lakers, I raised the budget line item that was supposed to be allocated each year for court resurfacing. My question is there a court resurfacing budget already that exists for courts across the city that can be used to help fund the resurfacing of these courts and the remediation of these courts, please? Because I know it was about a figure of about $300,000, I think, from memory.
Mr. Burton.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor, for the question. So we have allocations within our long-term financial plan at the moment. As Mr. Coaten mentioned, we're currently reviewing this and trying to get more specific in regards to certain sites and projects and undertake the relevant planning that's required so we've got a more accurate number. But I think what's different here is this is not just a resurfacing project. This is an actual full renewal as well. So, you know, the resurfacing is generally just the top acrylic layer, whereas this we're looking at bringing up the sub base, realigning courts, netting, drainage, all those sorts of things. So, so those allocations, whilst become somewhat relevant when we actually work through preparing the draft budget, sometimes we obviously keep those allocations in, or sometimes we use them to go to specific projects.
Councillor Wheatland.
Sorry, thank you. And thanks for that. That's a great explanation. So maybe on notice, could we get some information about how much of that budget per year has been spent on court resurfacing, whether it be netball, tennis, certainly isn't basketball, and then if there's anything left over from each year that could be allocated directly to this project, please.
Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. And yes, I certainly can provide that information. We'll take that one on notice.
Are there any further questions from elected members? If there's no further questions, we'll move on to yes, we're going to change the order of the items because there are some members of the gallery who would like to hear of any questions in regards to this one. Item C26406 RFT 252636 construction of Canning Bridge Town Centre, Morro Mews. I would like to remind the council that there is a confidential attachment associated with this item. If elected members wish to discuss the contents of these attachments, I will hold this item to the end of the meeting so we can go behind closed doors. Are there any questions in regards to the attachment? If there are no questions in regards to the attachment, then are there any questions from elected members about this item? If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next one, which is C26407 RFT 252644 supply of Canning Bridge Place space, Morro Mews. So again, I need to remind you that there's a confidential attachment associated with this item. Is there any elected member who wishes to discuss the confidential attachment? If nobody wishes to discuss the confidential attachment, are there any questions on this item? If there are no questions on this item, we will move on to the next item. Going back to M2696 adoption of proposed CAT amendment law 2026. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we're moving on to the next item, which is M2697, adoption of proposed fencing amendment local law 2026. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, moving on to item M2694, Common Seal, July 2026. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, could I just ask for a bit more information about the appointment of a proxy for the men's shed?
Director Yildiz. Legal, governance and risk.
Madam Mayor, apologies. Can Councillor Robbins repeat her question?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. I was just seeking some more information about the appointment of a proxy for the men's shed.
Oh,
Mr. Yildiz.
apologies, Madam. That was actually a question just seeking clarification on what that was. I'll have to take that on notice. Apologies. I actually looked at the deed of novation variation for the Resource Recovery Group, and I'll be able to provide you that advice.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on this item? Okay, moving on to the next one, M2695, attendance at Perth South West Metropolitan Alliance delegation to Adelaide. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I will move on to the next item. C26410 policy review, CP096 naming of roads, parks, buildings and infrastructure. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of questions. First of all, do dual names need council approval? That's my first question, because I just didn't feel like it was very obvious from the policy. And then secondly, is it the intent that all naming proposals come to council for a final decision? And if so, could that be made a bit more clear in the wording of the policy?
Director Tuffin, Corporate Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, sorry. In both situations, yes, they would be required to come to council. If you refer to the diagram on page 30 of the agenda, there's a decision tree there that sort of shows that process. So if it relates to a park or road, there's a more formal process through Landgate, as where if it's a community building that council would wish to name, then it would require a formal decision of council.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? If there are no further questions, moving on to...
Madam Mayor, I've just got a quick question.
Oh, you do have a question? Councillor Barber.
Is this going to hold up if we want to name something at all, or...?
I mean, will it hold up the process if we want to name something? Is that your question?
Does the new policy come into effect immediately if this decision is successful and we can just carry on with naming as per usual?
Mr. Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, it's not expected to create any delays. It's a review of the existing policy. In relation to, as I mentioned, if it was a road or a park, it is required to go to a formal process which is taken out of council's hands. So we'd work collaboratively with Landgate on selected names, but certainly that process would be a lot faster than any building that the council may wish to name.
If I may just have a quick follow-up, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Barber.
And just, has our naming register been all updated as well with this policy? Is that all ready to go?
Mr. Tuffin, Director Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of the revised policy, that schedule's now been removed.
Sorry, could you offer some clarity there, Director Tuffin? I didn't quite understand your response.
Yeah. So previously the policy referred to a schedule of names. That schedule of names has now been removed from the policy on the basis that I guess that the view was that it was quite restrictive in terms of that list, that there's more flexibility and opportunity to council come up with a name of a list of names, bearing in mind that, again, if it was for a road or park, it would then be required to go to Landgate for their approval. So generally we might come up with 4 or 5 names as preferred names. Then it would go to Landgate for their decision to advise whether those names are actually available for use.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question about the policy procedures section of the policy. So point 1 talks about topographical features such as roads and parks. And then point 3 is other city assets such as buildings and infrastructure. And then point 4 is internal spaces. And then between 1 and 3, you've got point 2 that talks about where there's Aboriginal or Aboriginal language derived names proposed. So does the point 2 only apply to the assets being named in point 1 and not to point 3 and 4? Is that how it's meant to be read?
Director Tuffin.
Sorry, I'm not clear on your question.
I guess I'm just confused because under the policy procedures, there sort of seems to be a hierarchy, so it's got topographical features such as roads and parks in part 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then part 2 doesn't really talk about any type of asset. Then 3 talks about city assets such as buildings, infrastructure, and then 4 talks about internal spaces. So I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of the hierarchy, but then also where point 2 sort of fits into that. Is point 2 only referring to the assets being named in part 1, or is it referring to the assets being named in 1, 3 and 4?
Generally part 1. So again, if it related to a road or a park, it would require a formal process and also consultation if we were to use an Aboriginal name or dual naming. And again, there's a requirement through Landgate, and they have a sort of dedicated process, as where if it was just a building that the city owned and controlled, it would be up to the city to decide on naming that or not.
So just to follow up, if I can. So for the city's assets mentioned in parts 3 and 4, there wouldn't be any, even if an Aboriginal or Aboriginal language derived name was proposed, there wouldn't be consultation with the Aboriginal groups?
No, my understanding there would be. If there was a proposed use of Aboriginal name, if it's an internal use, I probably would defer to community development. I don't know if Leanne has a view on that, but my understanding would be that yes, there would be consultation. Yeah, that's just been confirmed that there would generally be some consultation. Certainly, if it's outside a city asset, as I've stated, Landgate have their own guidelines in relation to that. But with a city asset, we would have our own process.
Are there any further questions on this item? Councillor Barber.
Oh, sorry, yeah, it's fairly close to my heart because I'm desperately trying to get a park in Victor named. So the process is that I have to get 4 names and then take them to the a city officer and who'll take it to Landgate. Is that right?
No.
Director Tuffin.
Thank you. No, that was just an example. I mean, we might have 10 names, but really what it comes down to is the availability of that name, because there's various reasons and criteria that Landgate use to assess applications for naming of parks or roads.
Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just picking up on Councillor Barber's point, but also combined with my own queries about the proposed policy, it doesn't seem to really include much of a process as to how these things take place. Could I just perhaps have some explanation from Mr. Tuffin about why that is, and if it's just because the process is considered operational and it doesn't need to be in the policy, that's fine. But I'm just questioning, whether it would be appropriate to include a bit more guidance about how the process takes place.
Director Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess in a nutshell, generally the process is dictated by Landgate. Point 3 under the policy procedure sort of states in relation to naming activities that fall out of the Landgate framework is really a council internal process, which would be run by the administration, and then a report to council.
Okay, any further questions? Right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item then. which is C26411 RFQ 252661, supply of security infrastructure and maintenance. This has a confidential attachment associated with this item. If you wish to discuss that confidential attachment, please let me know. Councillor Robbins, you wish to discuss the confidential attachment? Okay, we'll leave that for later in the meeting and go behind closed doors. Item C26409, investment statements, June 2026. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is C26414, schedule of accounts paid June 2026. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we're moving on to item C26415, statements of financial activity, June 2026. Any questions?
Madam Mayor, I've got a question. Am I allowed to go back to investment statements? No?
Yes, item C26409, investment statements. Councillor Barber.
Well, forgive my naivety, but all our investments are pretty low risk. Am I to understand that? With many of them in term deposits in banks. And I'm thinking that we're trying to keep rates down. So why do we not increase our level of risk? Could somebody explain that to me and get a better return on our investments?
Director Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Barber for the question. The simple answer is we're restricted under legislation in terms of the type of investments we're allowed to undertake and also the length of the investment. So the maximum term is 3 years and we are restricted to state treasury bonds or bank bonds.
They have to be term deposits and in banks and low risk.
Yeah, correct. When it comes to that, so we're excluded from any sort of activities in equity market. You may recall with Grange Securities, there was a number of issues. Shortly after that incident, there was amendments to the legislation to be quite prescriptive in terms of the type of investments local governments can make.
Okay, are there any further questions on that item? Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a quick clarification from Director Tuffin. Does that mean instead of putting that money in term deposits, we could utilise the same money for alternate revenue plan for property? Thanks.
Director Tuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor York. Look, that's correct, and that's something that we are looking at. And I should have mentioned, as part of the recent review of our investment strategy, we've actually looked at how we can better maximise our return, even though we are restricted to bank bills commercially. So what we've done is looked at longer periods, because depending on interest rates at the time, and based on the review that was undertaken, we could see in certain instances, had we sort of taken a longer horizon on our investments, we would have achieved a better return. So we are looking for ways that we can. And yes, you're correct also in terms of the alternative revenue strategy, we are looking at other available options where we could use those funds. As Council's aware, we have the Land and Property Reserve, which currently has a balance of around about $18.5 million, which is set up specifically for that purpose. So we are currently scanning the markets and looking for available opportunities.
Okay, have we finished with this item? We'll go back to the other item, which is CD 2671. No, it wasn't. It was C26415, statements of financial activity, June 2026. Are there any questions on that particular item? Okay, moving on to CD 2672, preliminary scoping report, Bonscott Civic Tribute feasibility assessment. Are there any questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite timely, actually, that this is coming up at this meeting when we've got the naming policy happening, and we've just approved Morrow Muse, or we haven't approved it. We've got items on the agenda in regards to that, and also we've got the development happening, proposed development happening in the consultation open right now for the Leopold Hotel. So I just wondered if there's any scope to look at some naming conventions either at the Leopold site or at Morrow Mews. We could make some changes to the officer recommendation. Would that create difficulties? I've got an idea for an amendment, I'm thinking.
I think there's a suggestion that perhaps it's best to talk about this at an EMIS. Sorry, before next meeting, between this meeting and the next meeting. Okay, any further questions on this particular item? Okay, we're moving on to CD 2671, Draft Morris Buzzercott Reserve Site Development Plan. Any questions? If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is UP 26109, Myrie Business Area Master Plan, consideration of submissions and final adoption. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we'll move on to UP 2594, Review of Local Planning Policy 3.1, Residential Development. I advise the council there is an officer advice note in relation to this item which was distributed as part of the ordinary meeting of council agenda on the 31st of July. Ms Kay Bainbridge, Manager of Development Approvals, will now provide a short officer presentation. Thank you, Ms Bainbridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this item has been a bit of a delay, unfortunately, but potentially fortuitous. This policy was initially presented back in, I think, May 2025 for consent to advertise. And then we went through an extensive advertising period and presented the proposed final policy review back up to council in December. However, there was a somewhat of a deferral recommended for it to go back to the Policy and Legislation Committee available at the time to look into a particular provision in relation to sightlines, more specifically for low density development, which we permit up here within sightlines currently. So we did some research and we went to an EMS in February with a recommendation. However, since that time, we had a number of committee changes which prevented us going back to fulfil the council resolution. And we also had a number of rather full OMC agendas. And then we also received word of some potential changes to the residential design codes. So we now have had the ministerial announcement on the 2nd of July with a number of changes to residential design codes. So this is put a bit of a spanner in the works, so to speak. Sorry, next slide. So basically, since we had the policy previously considered in December, we've had a number of reforms proposed to the residential design codes. And what that means is that there are a number of provisions within the local planning policy 3.1 which need to be reviewed again. What we want to do is make sure that whatever we do, we don't risk duplication, consultation fatigue, or potential policy changes becoming quickly outdated. So the issue is no longer sightlines, just only sightlines. There's a number of other things to consider once the final state planning framework is known in the residential design codes. So just to give you a bit of an outline of all the different policies that kind of interrelate. So next slide, please. We've got the local planning policy 1.6, which is parking access. That was covered in a separate EMS. It relates to parking for non-residential development and access and sightline provisions in relation to high density developments. This is not the item being considered at all tonight. We also have local planning policy 1.9, which is for building heights. So this, as a policy that relates to building height throughout the city, we are seeking to revoke it without inserting replacement provisions within LPP 3.1 at this time. We advertised that. We did receive some submission feedback wanting to keep the policy. However, there was also submission feedback saying it was good to revoke it because the R codes now cover it and that our policy is overly generous in comparison to the R codes. And we can exercise discretion. It's just more appropriate to use the R codes. We also have the one substantively being considered, which is local planning policy 3.1 for residential development. This is one that we recommend deferring until we know more about what's happening with the R codes. It's pretty difficult to proceed and create an expectation for the community, which will be shortly overrun by new changes to the R codes. So we've revised the officer recommendation accordingly, which was provided as an officer advice note to revoke local planning policy 1.9, that's the building height policy, without adding a replacement provisions at this time into the local planning policy 3.1, it's residential development policy, and to defer the further review of 3.1 until the state government R codes reforms are finalised and publicly released. So we just keep enforcing the current policy as is, and request the CEO advise the submitters of the outcome. So the practical effect of this is to pause the review until we know more information. So thank you very much. Available for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms Bainbridge?
I'm sorry, Kate, I might have missed it. So
Councillor
I definitely got you want to defer 3.1. Are we deferring 1.9 or are we revoking that now?
Thank you, through the chair. With regards to 1.9, we have advertised the revoking of that, even though technically we're not required to, and we've maintained consisting application of that through this time, but this will just require council resolution to formally revoke that policy. Yes, yeah, we just need the resolution to formally revoke it.
Are there any further questions for Ms Bainbridge? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is in relation to what appears to be a rather conflicting advice from the officers in relation to the review of LPS 6. We're told don't defer because establishing your position now makes you stronger in the event that changes are introduced that the city wouldn't agree with. In this particular case, why aren't we doing the same? Why aren't we going ahead establishing the city's position? If it aligns with the position that the state comes up with, no change is required. If it doesn't align and we're firmly of the belief that we've got it right, then it puts us in a stronger position to argue that. So why are we having two different approaches here?
Director Brellis, Planning.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Ross. The aspects of the R code review relevant to local planning scheme 6 in comparison to local planning policy 3.1 are quite different. Local planning scheme 6 is in relation to widespread density changes across the city and alignment with the city's local planning strategy. The local planning policy modifications relate specifically to sightlines for low density residential development within driveways and property boundaries. The R code announcement has specifically cited sightlines as an area for review within the R code's review. And as such, the city has recommended that this item be deferred until we have clarity on that. The Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage released the information on what aspects of the R codes, aside from density, would be reviewed so that local governments would be aware in undertaking policy modifications. And the Minister was very clear that he wanted uniform controls across the R codes with regards to residential development and particular matters like sight sightlines. So that's the reason why we're recommending the deferral. And I think the Department of Planning has provided advice around that consistency to the city as well.
Thank you, Mr. Varelis. Are there any further questions from elected members? If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Ms. Bainbridge, for your presentation. We're now moving on to item 15, motions with previous notice. 15.1, notice of motion, impact of proposed state planning reforms on local planning scheme 6. This motion is proposed by Councillor Wheatland and an updated version was circulated to elected members today. I advise that the officer advice note, which was distributed as part of the ordinary meeting of council agenda last Friday, is still applicable to the updated motion. Are there any questions? Director Varelis will answer those questions. Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just note that in the council agenda, the updated motion is in there. It's the old one. Sorry.
Head of Governance, Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, we'll do an update to the agenda on Friday. Thank you.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question to Director Varelis. I'd just like to know if there's anything in this motion that the city aren't doing already, and if there is something there that does need to be, perhaps maybe for the city to take, give it attention. Please advise so. Thanks.
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. The city presented to council at the elected member engagement session last week on the comprehensive review and modelling that will be undertaken with regards to local planning scheme 6 and the state government reforms at a density level. The work being undertaken is reflected in Councillor Wheatland's motion. Councillor Wheatland's motion is making that work publicly available and identified through a governance pathway. It's also setting some timeframes which the city had anticipated in any case.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So is there any purpose to this motion at all then? Thank you.
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, the purpose of the motion, through my understanding of discussions with Councillor Wheatland, is to make evident to the public the work that's being undertaken, which was discussed with councillors at the last elected member engagement session, and to make some of the timeframes known. And we're committed to meet those timeframes where possible. It's really reflecting the work that's being undertaken at the moment by the administration in accordance with the presentation that was given the other week.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor Spanbrook just said that this motion is pointless. I'd just like to state that the original motion that I put into governance and to the Director of Planning was about the current R codes that are being going through a process with the state government, the recent announcements on the R codes and the impact that will have on blocks of 700 square metres or less. And from after the presentation by Mr Ashwood, thinking on my feet, it raised further questions to me after I'd made changes to my original motion with the Director of Planning, that I still wanted to reflect the fact that the outcomes of the R codes could very well deliver the density requirements that we're putting in with the LPS 6. And I have been contacted.
Councillor Wheatland, it kind of sounds like a debate.
I'm just giving the clarity. So Councillor Spanbrook asked Director Varelis about the relevance and if this is actually a necessary motion. So I wrote the motion. I just wanted to give some backstory to it.
Yeah, that's
rather than being saying that it was pointless by Councillor Spanbrook.
I understand that, but it's sounding like a debate that needs to be had at council. So I'm just going to go back to Mr. Varelis or Director Varelis for some clarity, because my understanding is that your motion did change. Am I Yes, okay. It changed quite a few times. We've got the final version now. I thought you were giving us some understanding of that, but I think it sounds more like a debate. So let's
Madam
move on
Mayor,
to, I think Councillor Robbins had a question.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, excuse me, Councillor Robbins, there's no chance we can see Councillor Wheatland's updated version on the screen, is there?
It was emailed out today. Okay, so Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Does the additional communications and consultation with the community, will that result in any changes to the timeframes and timelines around the next phase of the project? Thanks.
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Robbins. The city is absorbing those communications at the moment as part of the current engagement on local planning scheme 6. We're making very clear to the community what aspects of the scheme review are impacted by the state government R code reforms, and we'll continue to engage with the community engagement team within the Community Development Directorate to ensure that that information is clear after the local planning scheme 6 consultation concludes towards the end of this month.
Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Question for Director Varelis. Just wondering, this motion, it won't incur any extra cost or extra officer time? Thanks.
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, as part of the city's resource planning for the local planning scheme 6 review, and many local governments across the metropolitan area that are undertaking this process at the moment are having to pivot and reallocate resources to respond to this change. So there will be additional resources, but those additional resources will be allocated through our general business planning and in response to broader state government initiatives. We can't always forecast what changes and impacts there will be on the business. We have to be dynamic and respond to that. And in consultation with the CEO and the other directors, we're pivoting resources accordingly. And an example of that is absorbing the changes as part of the current engagement, which wasn't foreseen, but we are putting additional communications out there and engaging on a more frequent basis with community around these state government reforms that are impacting the process.
Councillor York.
So does this motion doesn't really have any practical difference to what you're already doing anyway?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for the follow-up, Councillor York. It's consistent with the presentation that we provided at the last EMES, and we've worked with Councillor Wheatland to ensure that the city's processes and what was envisaged to adjust to the state government reforms is reflected in what Councillor Wheatland's put forward.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. I just want to clarify Councillor York's question to Director Varelis around costs, additional costs. I think, and maybe I need to ask this. So are you saying that this motion is going to necessitate additional costs to see it happen? Or are you saying that because of the process that the state government is going through with the changes to the R codes, that therefore needs the reallocation of costs, not this motion?
Director Varelis.
Through the chair, that's correct. Through the state government announcements, we've had to pivot and adjust our resourcing and allocation to the project to accommodate those changes.
Councillor Wheatland.
And can I just suggest that, instead of interrogating whether this is a relevant motion or not, that we just do it next week when we debate it?
Yes, and I think, can I just say, please don't use words like irrelevant. Just ask, and I think pointless and irrelevant. It would be better not to use those words, Councillor Spanbrook. I think perhaps choose other words, please. Councillor Spanbrook.
Oh, sorry, repeat that, please.
I said, please don't use words like pointless and irrelevant.
Did I use those?
Yes, you did. So
okay.
That's why
Sure.
Councillor Wheatland is concerned. So if you can rephrase your questions and so on, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think I need to rephrase ask in a different manner, perhaps. If this motion was not adopted next week, would the substantive work outlined, would that continue anyway?
Sorry, Director Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for the follow-up, Councillor Spanbrook. That work would continue consistent with the elected member engagement session and information that was provided last week on this topic.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? Okay, let's move on. I note that a motion with notice has been received from Councillor Green in relation to making public the statement of impact prepared in February 2024. This was circulated to elected members earlier today along with an officer advice note, both of which will be published in the final ordinary meeting of council agenda and uploaded on the city's website on this Friday. Well, since it's only been circulated today, it's probably a little bit challenging for questions to be asked, but I will offer you that opportunity if you wish. Okay. Otherwise, you can always talk to Councillor Green during the week. Item 16, motions without previous notice. There are no motions without previous notice for this meeting. We now are moving on to item 17, matters for which the meeting was closed to the public. We need to really, first of all, discuss an item that has been, this one. We have one item that needs to be discussed a few items. So can I have a mover and seconder for a motion to go behind closed doors? Councillor McGoldrick, Councillor York. Thank you. Anyone against? If nobody is against, I declare it carried. So there were no decisions made behind closed doors, but we did discuss item C26411 RFQ 252661, supply of security infrastructure and maintenance. Okay, Councillor Robbins, which
Thank you,
item
Madam
number
Mayor.
was that again, please?
Yes, just a quick question about the officer recommendation for LPB 3.1. The officer recommendation, obviously, as Ms Bainbridge said, has changed. Will that automatically be updated in the agenda, or will that require some action from elected members next Tuesday night?
Director Varelis, please.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Robbins. The revised recommendations contained within the officer advice note associated with the item, there was an understanding that the item was deferred at the previous meeting. However, since we've had governance advice to state that it was a referral, not a deferral. So while all the information in relation to this item is contained within the officer advice note, between the agenda briefing forum and the ordinary meeting of council, in consultation with governance, that report will be reviewed so that that is a formalised revised recommendation with an associated report. There was a misunderstanding between referral and deferral, and that's now been clarified with governance and will be reflected in the revised OMC agenda. Thank you for picking that up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we have reached item 19, closure of the meeting. Before I close the meeting, I advise that a late report for consideration at next week's ordinary meeting of council dealing with a confidential staff matter will be circulated to elected members as soon as practical. For the purposes of the notes, we don't have anybody online, so we don't need that one. So there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:25 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation.